Well, Ketov, today's daf is daf Tes Zion in Sota, as we learn for a four shleima for Akiva ben Chaya Rachel. 5 lines down on daf Tes Zion of Aleph. Iboilu, ain't sham offer. In the case of the Sota, where they prepare the water, the Kohen prepares the water, the mei amarim, the bitter water. He first puts the water in. We learned that he has to put water in into the cheres. That's what the Mishnah had said. We had a machlokas in the Gemara whether it has to come from the kior. Bishmol said it has to come from spring water. Chum said it can come from any water. In any case, you first put in the water. Now, then you put in dirt from underneath the tile in the Mishkan or the base Mikdash. So Yiboilu ain't sham if there's no dirt. Mahu she'iten efer. For some reason, there's no dirt there. Everything is solid, and there's no way to get dirt. So, can they use efer? Can they use ashes, like burnt wood? Ashes can use ashes. I'll leave it at Beishamai Loti Boilacha. Beishamai El Zamri Ein Lo Matzina Efer Shekari Ofar. Efer and offer, two different things. They're mixed up. Some people mix them up, but efer is ashes, offer is dirt. The two things are not the same. The pasuk says you have to put offer. So efer is not offer. You can't use ashes. Kiti Boilach Elurei Silu. According to Basil, the questions are according to Basil. The Amri Matzino Efer Shekari offer. Where do we find that? We find that because when it comes to the paraduma, when you prepare the meichatas from the paraduma, it says v'lakula tamei me'afar sreich v'asachatas. Take it from the dirt of the burning of the animal of the paraduma. What do you mean the burning? It's the ashes of the burning of the animal. What is afar? That's teaching you that afar and efer are sometimes interchangeable. Matzino efer. This is ash. In the case of the paraduma, we're certainly talking about the ashes of the animal, and that's called afar. So sometimes, since you find that efer can be used afar, therefore can use is the same as afar. So here in Sota, when it says afar, maybe you can use efer. Maybe you can use ashes. That's what Basil says. What does Beis Shammai do with that drasha? Beis Shammai says that afar sreifa. It says afar sreifa sachatas. It's called there. It's called there. The ashes are called the dirt of the burning of the ashes. But afar stam, efer stam is not called afar. Ashes mean ashes. Dirt means dirt. When it says the dirt of the burning of the chatas, okay. In that case, those ashes are called dirt. But since it's called the dirt of the burning, that's the same as ashes. But stam afar does not mean stam afar is never called ashes. Beis Shammai Omer afar sreifa nikra, afar stam alonikra. You never find that ashes are called dirt and dirt are called ashes. The dirt of the burning, that's ashes. Fine, that's ashes. But you don't find normally that ashes are called dirt. So therefore, dirt are not ashes. So therefore, if the pasuk says by Sota you need afar, there's no question that you can't use efer according to Beis Shammai. But according to Beis Hillel, that he says afar sreifas chatas teaches us that that sometimes ashes are called afar. So if here when the pasuk says afar, it can mean ashes too. My afagav dikri afar hacha bekarka mishkasiv. So the question is according to Beis Hillel. Can you use ashes if there's no dirt? In the case of Sota, the Sota's water, can you use ashes if there's no dirt? Do you say that they're interchangeable? Afar and efer are interchangeable as you find by paraduma, or according to Beis Hillel, or do you say even though that ashes are also called afar, and therefore when the pasuk is afar, it could mean ashes? Here the fact is it says karka hamishkan. Maybe so you do need dirt from the ground of the Mishkan, or you say no, the word bekarka Mishkan are for the drushes that we saw yesterday. Like Isi ben Yehuda said the reasons it's karka Mishkan is to tell you not only the Mishkan, but even Shiloh, Nov, and Givon, etc. in the base of Mikdash, there the same rules apply. Or the Isi ben Menachem, who said that you must take the dirt, if there's no dirt under the tile in the Mishkan, take the dirt and put it on the bakarka mishkan, put it there first, and then you could use that dirt for the meipara. So these are the questions. This is the question that's raised over here. Maybe karka mishkan is for the other drushes, and therefore maybe you could use ashes if there is no dirt there. That's the question. The Karka Mishkan is for those drushes. Does it have to be first be put under the tile, meaning on the floor of the Mishkan? Or maybe it's to teach me that it applies by Shiloh and Nov and Givon and Beis Salomim. Maybe that's what Karka Mishkan is to teach me. But indeed, you could use ashes. That's the question that's raised over here. Toshma, let's try to bring a proof. Can we find a proof for this question? Can ashes be used if there's no offer, if there's no dirt? Toshma, Rabbi Shmuel says an interesting thing. Even though the pasuk says in 3 places, use the following item, this is the instrument that you must use, right? You must use this instrument or apparatus. However, halacha mosh misina comes along and supersedes that. An interesting thing, supersedes that. Where do we find that? Mikra. HaTorah, the Torah says ba'afar. The Torah says afar. Which afar are we speaking to there? Kisi Adam. If you shecht an animal like a let's say like a bird or certain animals need kisi Adam. That means the dam has to be covered over with dirt, right? Not all animals, certain animals, right? It's a whole parsha to itself. Kisi Adam. So the pasuk says you must cover it with dirt. But the halacha mashmi says b'chol davar, anything in which plants can grow. So it can even grow, let's say, in certain kinds of cement or bricks or other materials, lime, etc., things like that. It doesn't have to be dirt. It could be anything in which plants can grow. That's one case where the Torah says afar, and the halacha says use anything in which plants can grow. B'chol davar. The Torah says that the Nazir is not allowed to take a razor, a blade to his head, to his head. Any way you remove hair, if you cut your hair with scissors or anything else, that's also forbidden. So here again, Allah Sinai says includes more than the tar. Now, you might say, how can Allah Sinai supersede the pasuk? This is Rabbi Shmuel's drasha. The ones who disagree with him say all those things they agree with the halacha, but they're learned out of psukim. Rabbi Shmuel says no, those psukim are used for other drashas, and this is simply Allah Sinai, which supersedes that. What's the third case? HaTorah Amra Sefer. The Torah says that when a man divorces his wife, it says with Nasan Sefer Krisis. Sefer normally means, as we'll see, we'll talk about that on tomorrow's Dapim Hashem about how the parchment that's used for the Sota, for the Sota's water, is it parchment? It can be used paper, whatever. So by get also, it says Sefer Krisis, which indicates normally parchment, but the fact is it can be written on anything which is detached, even a leaf from a tree, and detach it. Remember, you can't write it on the tree, or you can write it on a tree if the tree has been detached. You can't write it on the tree, then cut down the tree and give it to her, because then it's a chasarn of a cost of a nosim, right? It's got to be something that you can give her immediately, not something you have to cut down first. But in any case, it can be written on halacha b'chol davar. You can write it on it. It doesn't have to be written on parchment. So here's 3 things Rabbi Shmuel says that halacha mashmi Sinai supersedes the pasuk. And if you think that despite the fact that the pasuk says afar, when it comes to sota, you must put the dirt into the water, right? If it means besides dirt, you can even use ashes. So lichshav damiha. So you should namiha. You should include this too. The Torah says you got to put dirt in the water, and you want to come along and say that you can even use ashes. So, and since it doesn't say that, remember when the Torah excludes one case, that means it's excluding it. If it's excluding many cases, so fine. So you say that, other cases are included, but we only mention these 3. So the Gemara says, Tan of a Shiur. You're right. Maybe the truth is you could use ashes. You want to say since it's not included in those 3, therefore it goes that ashes cannot be used in place of dirt. No, maybe ashes can be used in place of dirt. Tan of a Shiur, the Tana didn't list them all. Like the Torah says, the Gemara says many places, the Tana is going to list all the cases like a peddler who lists all his wares. No, Tana of a Shiur, we left out several things, more than one thing. My Shiur Haisha, what else did you leave out? If you only left out this, that would exclude it. You left out other things too. What else did you list out? Shiur Mitzorah, left out the case of Mitzorah. What's the case of Mitzorah? Tanya, listen carefully. When the Mitzorah, after his leprosy was confirmed, called leprosy for lack of a better word, saras, was confirmed, he's tamei until leprosy goes away. after he's purified, he has to go through two steps. First, Tanya, on the seventh day, Galachas kol saro. Okay, this is already the second time he shaves. In other words, after he purifies himself the first time, and he goes through the purification process, he's got to shave. The pasuk says there he shaves all the hair on his body, top to bottom. Every hair on his body has got to be cut off. That's the first time, the first purification. Then 7 days later, he goes through like Shiva Nikiyim. Then he has to shave again. But on the seventh day, it doesn't say cut all the hair, every hair on his body. It says kol sa'aro. It says cuts off all his hair. What hair? That's a general category. Es rosho. Then it says on his head. Vesikno on his beard. Ves gabasein of his eyebrows. Prat. Then he lists individual things. Ves kol sa'aro. And then again it says all his hair. Galech chazav klal. It says a generalization, a particularization, then another generalization. Klal protocol, yet on prat. It's got to be like the prat. Ma prat beforish, just like a prat is beforish. What are the prat and the beforishim? The head, the beard, the eyebrows. Mokum kinasar, where there's a lot of hair together, where the hair is gathered together, as opposed to, let's say, your arms, where it's not gathered together. It's just loose, separate. You can see each hair separately. But in the eyebrows or the hair or the beard, mokum kinasar, venira, and it's seen. There's a scene. What does it mean, seen, as opposed to, let's say, underarms? Af kol bakam kinas, any place where there's a lot of hair, kinuseir, veneer is hair, ma rabbi. So it's got to be something. Klal protocol, the rule is that it's anything like the prat, just like the prat is, hair is gathered together and it's seen. Ma rabbi. So the same thing, all hair like that. Ma rabbi. What does it include? Rabbi seir aglayim. It includes even pubic hair. It's a nice way of saying seir or aglayim because it's mechunas. It doesn't mean on your legs or on your arms where it's not mechunas. It's not gathered together. But on the pubic hair, that is. So it includes pubic hairs to be cut also on the seventh day, meaning the second cutting. Mind me, what's excluded? The Beis HaShechi, underarms, which is not seen. Right? That's not seen, so therefore that doesn't have to be cut. Right? Udakuli gufe, and not only underarms, and the whole body. In other words, the whole body, on hair on any parts of the body. You might have hair on your fingers or whatever. That's not mechunas. It's not gathered together. Okay, so those are excluded. Those are excluded based on the pasuk. But the hilchasa, the halacha moshe misinai, megalech kedalas. The fact is, even though the second shaving, again by the first cutting, right? The pasuk says, it says. Maver tar al kol besaro, right? That's what it says by the first cutting. You have to take the blade to all the hair on your body. That's very clear. But by the second one, it says kol saro. It doesn't say kol saro plain, which would include everything. And now it says kol saro, and then it lists the head and the beard and the eyebrows, and then it says again the generalization to show you that only things like that. So by the second one, it does include as much yet, even though by the second shaving, after 7 days of purification. The pasuk only says you have to cut hair which is visible and which is gathered together. You still cut your hair like a pumpkin. In other words, nothing's left. You cut it all off. You're totally shaved. That's not as we see in the Mishnah. When it comes to shaving, it's a mitzora. When it comes to shaving, mavital kol besoro. That's what al kol besoro. That's the first time. Viktani seifa. That's one of the first shaving. After 7 days, uvayom shvi megalcho tiglachas shnia kit tiglachas rishona. Even though the pasuk only says that the first shaving has to be total, the second one is limited to the things, as we said, hair which is gathered together and is visible, excluding, let's say, hair on your legs or hair on your arms and hair under your armpits, which is not seen. On your arms and legs, it's not gathered together, and under your armpits, it's not seen. So it excludes those. Yet the Mishnah says over there, then the seventh day, you still cut everything just like the first one. You cut it all off, indicating that the halacha mashmi Sinai also supersedes the pasuk. So here's another case. Mitzvah is another case, and therefore we could say too by sota, even though the pasuk says dirt, you can include ashes also. That's the proof that he wants to bring. Now, just a couple of points. Rashi here points out again. He mentions twice on this page shchitas chulin, because he talks about what goes on chulin. That mentioning. Remember, I always say that Rashi, yesterday's Dapim mentioned shchitas kachim. He calls zvachim shchitas kachim. Here he mentions shchitas chulin. But why does Rashi bring it down? Because Rashi says that he brings down the Gemara in Kedushin also that the three things that Rabbi Shmuel mentioned as the halacha moshe Sinai superseding the pasuk here in our Gemara, it talks about what? Kisi Adam, the Nazir shaving his head, and the get, right? That doesn't have to be on paper, could be on anything. In Kedushin, he doesn't use the case of Nazir, right? Because he says Nazir is really not superseding the pasuk; it's just telling you an additional one. So that's not as strong. Rashi first asks that as a question, then he says no, it's superseding it because if he shaves in any way, you give him malchus, and you wouldn't give malchus unless you can't do it for can't do it stam. So it's not simply an addition. It's mashma that it's like halacha mashmi Sinai. But in Kedushin, he brings down the third one not being the Nazir, but rather being the case of the Martseya and the case of the Eved Ivri, who wants to stay after 6 years, and he's an Eved La'olam until Yovel. It says over there, what do? You use an awl, right? What does the pasuk say, Michael? V'lakachas Martseya, right? You take the Martseya, but the halacha says even using a thorn or a prick to puncture his ear also is there. So that's the case there that Rav Shmuel uses as halacha Messina. So if you would say, he says those three, okay, you could say, well, then there's 4, so that is an extra one, but he doesn't say that. Rabbi Shmuel always says 3. In our Gemara, here in the Bavli, he uses these 3: the Afar, the Kisi Adam, the Nazir, and the Get. In Kedushin, he replaces Nazir with Martseya. But in any case, there's still only 3. So therefore, you would exclude this one. No, Tana Vashai, we have Mitzorah too. The case of Mitzorah, where the pasuk only says that you have to cut visible and gathered hair, and we see that you cut it all. So the Gemara says there's no proof from Mitzorah. Mitzorah is not a case where the halacha supersedes the pasuk. Why? Halacha mashmisina supersedes. Why? 3 reasons. Amar Rav Nachman, we're 6 lines from the bottom of the page on Tesayin of an Alpha. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Kika Chashav halacha okeves mikra, halacha okeves mikra. We're talking about where's a case where the halacha mashmi Sinai supersedes the pasuk. The pasuk says one thing, and halacha mashmi Sinai says something else. Here it's not halacha mashmi Sinai. The fact that you have to cut all your hair the second time by mitzorah, as opposed to everything except that according to the pasuk, you don't have to cut the underarms and the legs and the arms, things like that, where it's not mechunas. And we say, no, you cut it all like the first cutting. That's only Achad Rabbanan. Rabbanan said, add on, no, once you're cutting, cut on everything. Don't confuse the first one, the second one, just cut off everything. That's not Halacha Mashmi Sinai. We're talking about where's Halacha Mashmi Sinai superseding a pasuk. So here, our question is, Halacha, in the Torah, in the case of a sota, if you have a sota and you don't have any dirt, can you use ashes? That's halacha in the Torah. It's not the Rabbanan wouldn't say, well, you don't have to use offer, you could use ashes. They wouldn't say that. That's not a something that they would do. We're talking about a daraisa. So you can't prove from Mitzorah. Mitzorah, the fact that you cut off the other hair too, including the armpits and the legs and the arms, that's midrabanan. So they're adding on, Rabbanan saying, cut it all off. That's not halacha mishmasinai. That's one answer. We're talking about where the halacha mishmasinai uproots the halacha in the Torah, meaning the Torah says use a parchment, let's say for a get, and we say no, you could use even a leaf from a tree. The Torah says you're only chayiv if you only chayiv if he uses a razor or a blade on his head, and the halacha mishmasinai says no, even you're chayiv even if you use scissors. The Torah says you have to use ofar on kisi adam. Halacha mishmasinai says you can even use anything that grows that would grow plants. Rambam says we're talking about where we're uprooting the halacha. We're uprooting the halacha in the Torah. The Torah says you must do this. The halacha mishmasinai says you can use something else. This is superseding or going roundabout. But in the case of the Mitzorah, but it's not uprooting. The Torah says you have to cut off all your hair, which is gathered the second time. This should be gathered and visible. And you know what? So the halach, even if this is halacha mashmi Sinai, it's only adding on, saying no, don't limit it to that. Also cut the underarms and also shave the underarms and the legs and the arms. But it's only adding on. It's not uprooting. It's not saying do the main part in a different way. By the get and the kisi adam and the nazir, we're saying you're chayiv to do it in a different way, or in the case of the get, you may do it in a different way, not the way that the Torah prescribes. Here, we're just saying that, yes, you have to cut off the hair like the Torah says, but you know what? Cut off additional hair too. We're only adding on. So it's not a case of halach mishmasinai uprooting uprooting the halacha in the Torah. Rav Ashi gives a third answer why you can't use an example from Mitzorah to show that only these cases, that there are other cases also where halacha supersedes the pasuk. Rashi says, "Ha masnisa mani Rabbi Shmuel." This whole brisa about three cases is the three cases, and then the case, not just the three cases, that's certainly Rabbi Shmuel, but the case of Mitzorah is goes like Rabbi Shmuel, the Darsh Kal Pati. Rashi brings down the 2 lines from the bottom of the page in Rashi. Rabbi Shmuel, he did tutelage under Rabbi Nechuni ben Akana, right? He was Meshamash Rabbi Nechuni ben Akana, and who darshan the Torah b'Kal Prat. There's 2 ways to learn the Torah, the Kal Prat or Ribu and Miyat. So Rabbi Shmuel learned the Torah with Kal Prati. Rabbi Kiva learned from Nachum Ish Gamzu, his Rebbe, and they darshan the Torah generally with Klal Prat. They're both Torah, as we see, the Shloshis Midos, etc. But the question is, which one do you prefer to use when you can use both? Rav Ashi says, you know what? Rabbi Shmuel is the one who darshans Klal Prati. So he says, you know what? That Torah on the 7th day, you only cut off hair which is visible and gathered together, excluding Beis HaShechin, excluding the arms and the legs. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. But the case over here where we say that you have to cut it all off, no, you cut off all the hair, including the underarms and the legs and the arms. The case of Kedalas, that's Monday, goes like Rabbi Kiva, the Darish Ribu Miyat. In other words, according to Rabbi Kiva, the Torah says you have to cut it all off on the 7th day. Why? Because he darshans the same psukim, but with Ribu Miyat, the Tanya. We're on Amud Beis now, the second line. The same pasuk we said before. That's Riba. That's Rosh Hashanah, the head and the beard and the eyebrows. That's a miyat. That's called Sari Galech, and then all the hair. Yeah. Chazav Riba. That includes, again, we're marba more. The difference between Riba and miyat and Klal Prat is when you have Riba and miyat or Riba, you include everything. Riba and miyat, Riba, you include basically all the hair in your body. My Riba, the kule gufa, the whole body is included. Basically, so you're saying it's not halacha superseding the Klal Prat or Klal that's in the pasuk, but rather the pasuk itself is telling you have to include all the hair. So what are you excluding? There is a miyat here of zikna of gaba saying, what do you exclude? My miyat seir shebetocha chotam, your nose hair, which really is really the littlest thing there, right? So that's what you're excluding. So again, that's where Kiva. So you can't say that Mitzorah is this goes like this whole drasha of Mitzorah is if you're like Rabbi Shmuel. But if you say, oh, the halacha supersedes it because you must take off all the hair in your body on the 7th day. Yeah, but that's according to Rabbi Kiva, who darshans Riba Miyat, so you can't mix the two. That Rabbi Shmuel is one thing. He says, you don't cut the armpits, you don't cut the hair on the armpits and the legs and the arms. But according to Rabbi Kiva, you do, because he learns the pasuk with Riba Miyat. So my Havila, we're back to our question that we started today's daf with. What is the case? Can you use ashes instead of dirt on the case of the Sota? We couldn't prove it. We wanted to prove it from the fact that Rabbi Shmuel said there's 3 cases and no more. Yeah, but the fact there's only 3 cases, so maybe there are no more. And the ton of a Shiur doesn't work in the case of the Mitzorah. So we're back to our question. Tashma, Damar Avuna Barav Ashim Marav, Ain Sham offer. He says, you know what? If there's no dirt, maybe Rakbufis Yerik, you can bring decayed vegetables. Umakadish, put them down on the ground at the Mishkan of the base of Mikdash, put them on the ground by the towel there, and that'll sanctify it. And then you could take that stuff and use that for the water. So you see here that you don't have to use dafka dirt. You can use decayed vegetables too. Below, you can't prove anything from there. And maybe you want to prove from there that maybe you could use ashes too. Loi, Rakvuvas Yeriku Dave offer, Afer Lave offer. You could say that decayed vegetables is like dirt. It's all dirt. It's all grows in the ground, right? It all happens naturally. But ashes are something else. Ashes is from burnt materials, burnt wood, burnt items, burnt growths. That's a different thing, and therefore it's not the same. And therefore the Gemara does not solve the question of whether you can use ashes in lieu of dirt. So the Mishnah said, now we come to this fact, when you put the dirt in the water, right? When you put the dirt in the water, so it has to. The Mishnah said you have to put enough dirt in there so that it's visible. When you look at the water, it's not. If you just put a little dirt in water, it might get absorbed and you wouldn't see it. You have to be enough there so that it's visible. There are 3 items, 3 cases where the stuff that you put into the water must be visible. right? And well, in this, it's not only stuff you put into the water. We'll see 3 items must be visible. Number one, afar sota. The dirt that you put into the sota's water has to be visible. The afer para. In the case of the afer para, what does that mean? When you put the ashes into the water there, also has to be visible. And Varok Yavama, that's not putting into something else, but when Yavama spits, we always confuse that. People think he spits into the face of the brother. It's not into the face. She spits across his face. Yes, she spit in front of these kanim, in front of the judges. You have to be visible, spit that's visible. Okay, so that has to be visible. The afar sot has to be visible. The afer par has to be visible. Mishumar b'shmuel lamber af dam tzipor. Even the dam tzipor. Now, in the case of a metzora, talk a lot about metzora. Here we're going to talk about in this purification process. You have to shecht. You slaughter one of the 2 birds. You take one of the 2 birds and you slaughter that over water, over a kli of water. So he says that the dam has to be when you slaughter it over there. You take a little bird, what we call it sipor drawers. We'll see, like a swallow, and you slaughter that over the water. It has to be enough water, so just enough water that the dam could be visible in the water, so it's reddish, so you could see it. Okay, it can't be too much water and it can't be too much dam. It's got to be, you could see water and the blood. So my time, what's Rabbi Shmuel's reasoning? The Siv, it says in the pasuk by Mitzvah, it says v'tavel osam b'damat tzipor. Pasuk is, and if you're looking Perikei Dalet and Vayikra, it says in pasuk Vav, it says as a sipor achai, you take the live one. That's 8 eras. You take the live, the other bird, and the 8 eras, the cedar wood and the scarlet and the hyssop, and you dip them all in tavalosam esat tzipor achaya bedam tzipor shchut ala mayim chayim, and you dip that in the dam of the first tzipor that you shechted it based on the previous pasuk there. It says v'shachras at tzipor achas hashchut ala mayim chayim. It says v'tavalosam bedam tzipor v'tanya bedam yachal bedam lo mayim. You might think you dip it into the dam, not to the water. Tamalomer mayim. It takes out the base there because, as Rashi points out, we're talking about the previous pasuk. It says v'tziva hakohen v'shacharas at tzipor achas el klicheres al mayim chayim. Okay, so it says in water. So maybe you're supposed to be dip these things into the water, not to the blood. Tamalomer badam. Okay, so how do you do that? Maybe mayim shadam tzipor nikaban. How do you fulfill dipping it both in water and in dam? If you only maybe it can't just be only water. It says badam. It can't be only dam. It says mayim. So you have to dip it in dam. You dip it in mayim. So you bring water in which the dam of the tzipor, the dam of the bird, is recognizable. So it's visible. You could see the dam of the tzipor in the water. That's what you do. But how much water is that? Revius. You use a revius a log of water, and the dam. If you put the dam in there, it could be visible. We're talking a few minutes about, well, it depend on how big the bird is, how much dam is leaking out there, right? But we'll see in a minute. But he says use kama revius. Rabbanan. Okay, so that's what he says. You have to use revius. So Rabbi Shmuel says there's another one. And as besides the dafar sotes to be seen in the afer para, also the rokia and the rokia rama, also dam tzipor also has to be visible in the case of the tzaras, in the case of the purification of the metzora. You have to be able to see the dam in the water there. The Rabbanan disagree because the Rabbanan said 3 things: afar sota, afer para, rokia vama. And Rishmal said dam tzipor also. The Rabbanan say no. You don't have to be able. It doesn't have to be visible. When the dam goes into the water, it doesn't have to be visible. It doesn't have to be exactly amount of revius water. If you had a lot more water and the dam, once it was put into the water, was not visible in there, it would also be okay. Rabbanan, legufe. The reason why it says b'mayim and badam is to tell me that basically this is what Hashem is telling us. Atul badam uvamayim. You have to be tovel in dam and water. He's not telling you that it's got to be that dam has to be visible in the water. He's simply telling you have to be tovel in the dam and in the blood and in the water. Rabbi Shmuel im kain, if it would only be telling you have to be tovel in dam and water, and it's not telling you that the dam has to be visible in the water. Let it just say be tovel b'hem. We already talked about b'shachadas at tzipor el klicheres al mayim chayim. We already talked about that the blood's going in there. So just say v'tovel osam b'hem. Why does it say badam alamayim chayim? Just say v'tavahem. Badam mayim lami. Why does it say badam uvamayim? Lenikr, to tell me it's got to be visible. Rabbanan disagree. Rabbanan say no, it doesn't be visible because Rachmana b'tavel bahem. It would say bahem havi amina. Maybe it just says, if it says you have to dip these things in them, meaning the water and the dam, those are the two liquids that we're talking about here that are liquid. Maybe you have to be dipped in separately. First dip in the dam, then dip in the water. Maybe that's what it means, right? The reason it says dam mayim is to tell me la'arvan. Yes, Bahem would have said both of them, but maybe individually. It says but dam mayim, you have to mix them up. Rabbi Shmuel la'arvan korachmina. That they have to be mixed up. I have another pasuk for the previous pasuk. Pasuk hey. It says v'shachadas at sipor echas. That's what it's v'shachadas sipor echas el klicheres al mayim chayim. So we already know that the tzipor has to be shechted on top of the klicheres, which has the mayim in it. So obviously they're mixed up already. So why does it say badam uva mayim to teach me that the dam has to be visible? Rabbanan say no. If it would only be that pasuk, the first pasuk, v'shachadas at sipor echas el klicheres al mayim chayim, I might say have him in a lishchetei samach lamara, shecht it near the vessel, and press the jugular veins so that the blood doesn't come out. In other words, there's one halach, you have to shech the bird over the klicheres al mayim chayim, el klicheres, shecht it over this vessel that has the mayim chayim in it, but don't have the blood go into that vessel. Have the blood go into a neighboring vessel. Shecht it, but hold the blood, so to speak. Press the vessel, the veins, whatever, so that the blood doesn't come out, and put that into another one. That pasuk doesn't take and accept the dam. Put the dam b'manachmin in a different vessel. Kamash malan. Therefore, it says what? Tell me that it's got to be mixed together. The dam and the water have to be mixed together. Otherwise, I would think you could do them separately, right? You could do them separately. And v'shachadas tzipor doesn't tell me that they have to be together, because it could be you have to keep them separate. Keep the shechted over this vessel, but don't let the blood go into this vessel. Put another one. Kamash on that. So therefore, we have this machlokes. Does the water have to be seen in the? Does the item that's mixed in have to be seen? So there's a machlokas here about the case of the tsaras. In case of when your purification process, does the dam tzipor have to be seen in the water? Everybody agrees that in the case of the rok yavama, in the case of the afer para, in the case of the afar sota, that has to be visible. Boimine, Rav Yomi has the following question of Rav Zeh regarding this case of the tsaras with the dam tzipor. What happens if the bird is very big and it's got so much blood that it obliterates the water? You don't see water. All you see is blood. The bird is so big that when you shech the bird, everybody agrees at the end of it, everybody agrees you shech the bird over the mayim chayim and it gets mixed up together. Everybody agrees that that's how it is at the end. The question is, does it have to be visible? Does the blood have to be visible in the water? What happens if there's so much blood that you don't see the water? Or if the bird is so small, the water obliterates it because the bird is so small. And it's beyond your control, right? It depends on the size of the bird. Now, Amarle, so Rav Zeh answered him, Machmanish Mishiga. That's what he says. Lava mina lacha. Didn't I tell you, lo tepuk nafshacha lebarmich? Didn't I tell you not to put yourself out of the loch? In other words, when the rabbi said something, don't start asking questions that don't make any sense. Rashi says, and don't start asking questions about them. The rabbi said it, but sipur drawer in a regular, like a free bird, like a swallow, a small bird that's used in the case of the Mitzora, Shiur Rabbanah, the rabbis estimated that there's none of these birds are so big that they obliterate the water. There's no bird that's so small that the water obliterates them. Don't ask me questions like that. The regular small birds, if you put them in the water, in this amount of water, it'll be seen. That's only according to Bishmal anyway that we have this problem, because according to Chacham, it doesn't have to be seen in the water. We don't care how big the water, how much water is used, or how much blood is in the bird. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't have to be seen. You just have to follow the rules and shech the bird over the water. But according to Bishmal, who says that you have to use a revius of water and the bird, the question can raise, well, what about what happens? There's too much blood, or what happens? There's too much water. The answer is that with the small bird, that's not going to happen. Tana Rabbanan. So we haven't resolved the question about can you use ashes for the sota, and we've discussed here. But the water, everybody agrees, like the Mishnah, that the afar that you put in the May Marim has to be visible in the water. Tana Rabbanan. Now the pasuk says, let's go back to sota. We were talking about Sarasi. Let's go back to sota. What does the pasuk say when it comes to the process of preparing the water? It says, he takes water in the klicheres, and from the dirt that's in the karka of the Mishkan, we discussed karka Mishkan, it's got to be there. So it says very clearly, the pasuk says in Parakeh Bamidbar, pasuk Yud Zayin, that you take the water in the cheres and then you put the dirt in. The case of the sota. Tana Rabbanan. Gemara says, let's say you did a reverse. You put the offer in the kli before the water, so that's puzzle. It's no good. The pasuk says very clearly, you take the water in the kli and you take the dirt and put it in there. If you did it reverse, if you put the offer first, it's puzzle. That's what the Tanakama says. Rav Shimon Machshir, we pass and presume like the Tanakama. Rav Shimon Machshir, Shimon says it's okay. Either way you do it is fine. My time, what's his reason? The Chsivit says by para aduma. Remember, we mentioned before that the Afer Para has to be visible and the Afar Sot has to be visible. Okay, they have that in common. Here, we're also going to learn out something, according to Reb Shimon, from Paraduma. It says, V'lakula tamei me'afar sreifas achatas, that passage we quoted before, that according to Beisul, it shows you afar sreifas achatas, that Afar and Afer are interchangeable. And Beis Shammai said, no, afar sreifas achatas it's called, but it's not called afar stam. But the pasuk says, V'lakula tamei me'afar sreifas achatas, B'tanya, and we learn, Reb Shimon, why is it called Afar? It's really ashes. It's not dirt. It's obviously, the pasuk means ashes. Shina kasav mashmo. Why did the pasuk say Afar? Why did the pasuk say Afer, which is really what it is? You can't just take dirt over there. It's not. If you wouldn't use the ashes of the paraduma, it's not mechatas, right? That's the main ingredient. Is the ashes of the animal, not afar. Shina kos mashmo. The pasuk changed its lashon to teach us ladun heimena, to teach us gzeira shava. Nemer kan afar. It says over here afar. What's kan over here by paradum? It says afar. The nemer lahal it says afar by sota. Ma lahal afar al gabi amayim. Just like where by sota, what's l'chadchila? What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to take the offer and put it into the water, like we just said, right? Like you take it on water. Afkan offer gabi mayim. Here also by paraduma, you should take the afer, the ashes, and put them on the mayim. In other words, the reason it says offer instead of afer by paraduma is to teach me this gzeira shava. That just like by sota, the offer goes into the water, not the other way around. The same thing by paraduma. Umakan hikdem offer the mayim. But just like by paraduma, if the offer was there first, if the afer, the ashes were there first, it's kosher. How do we know that? We'll see in a second. Aflahala and hikdem after lamayim kosher. Same thing by sota. So that's why Reb Shimon agrees. Reb Shimon says we went off from paraduma. The Rabbanan say no, you got to follow the rules in pasuk Yud Zayin and by sota that the water must be there first and then the dirt. Rabbi Shimon says, no, you learn out from paraduma, it could be the other way around too. If the offer was there before the water, that's also okay. And by paraduma, the lashon is a little strange because the halan is sota, kan is paraduma, the halan is sota, and then hasamino. How do we know by paraduma that if you put the dirt in first, it's okay? Why? Because Trey Croix, if it says over there, ksiv alav, right? V'nasan alav mayim chayim. El Kelly. What does Allah mean? Put on the dirt. That's Allah Mayim Chaim. That's when you put the water on top of the dirt. That means the dirt went in first. Alma Efer Bereisha. So you see that the ashes go in first. It says V'nasan Allah Mayim Chaim El Kelly. Right, Michael? V'nasan Allah. Put water. It sounds like Allah on. You put the water. V'nasan Allah Mayim Chaim. Put the water on the dirt. That's what it sounds like. Meaning not the dirt, the ashes. Right? Put ashes. Alma, Afer Beshmas, the ashes going first. Because of Mayim Chaim El Kelly, then it says no, that the spring water has to go in directly to the Kli, which indicates what? That the water goes in first. So what goes first into the Kli when it comes to the paraduma? Is it the Afer, the ashes, That's what it sounds like. Benaslan alav, the water goes on top of the ashes. That means the ashes were there first. Or do you say no, Mayim Chaim al Keli, which means that the water has to directly hit the kli before the dirt's in, before the ashes are in there. Amamayim Beresha. So the pasuk can go either way. Okay, so what do you see from there? Ratzah Zed Nosen, Ratzah Zed Nosen. So Rav Shimon learns from there that, you know what, either one can go in first. Because Nosen Alav Mayim Chaim sounds like you put the water on the ashes, right? Mayim Chaim El Keli, though, sounds like that the water goes in first. So the answer is you could do either one. So, and therefore, so you could do either one. So, and Reb Shimon says, therefore, since by Paraduma, you could do either one, the same thing by Sota. Certainly by Sota, Lechatchili, you're supposed to put the water in first, then the dirt. But he says, you know what? You learn out from Paraduma that if you put the dirt in first, it's okay too. Rabbanan, El Kli Dafka. Rabbanan say, no. El Kli is Dafka. You got to put the water in first by Paraduma, just like by Sota. A love is la'arvan. La'arvan is to tell you, you put it on there that once you put the water in first, but when you put the ashes in afterwards, you're supposed to mix it up. La'arvan, to mix them up. So the Gemara says, no, maybe a love dafka, maybe the other way around. Maybe the dirt has to go in first. A love is dafka, put the water on top of the dirt. El Keli sheteichiyus makli, to tell you know that you can't have an interim vessel between the spring water and the kli that has the paraduma ashes in it. It's got to come directly. Maybe that's what it means. El Keli, you got to get the water directly from the spring into the vessel, but maybe the ashes should be there first. He says, no, you can't say that. Mamatzinu, all right, Rabbanan say El Keli means dafka. It's the water's got to go in first, both by Sota and by Paraduma. And Allah is the teacher, they mix them up. And maybe the water's, maybe Allah is dafka, that's supposed to put the dirt in first. And El Keli said, tell me, let's go, that the water has come directly from the spring with no interim vessel in between. He says, no, Mamatzinu b'chol makom machshir lamala. We always find that the machshir, the thing that makes the water permissible and ready and kosher to use, that makes it fit for use, we call that. The thing is fit for use is always on top. In other words, by Sota, you find that you have the water, the dirt, putting the dirt into the water makes it fit for use with the woman. By Mitzora, the putting the dam into the water makes it fit for use. So the same thing, Afkan Machshalamala, same thing by Paraduma. What makes it kosher, what makes it fit for use is the ingredient that what makes the water fit for use, the thing that you put in, whether it's the dam by the mitzora, whether it's the afar by the sota, or whether it's the ashes by the paraduma, it's that always goes on top. The last Rashi on the page, machshel amala, afar hua machshir esamayim, that makes the water fit. Livdokasa to check the woman. Here also the offers goes in first, and that's how we paskin that you have to put the water in first, and then afterwards the afar. And if you did it the other way around, it's puzzle. Tomorrow's daf is Daf Yud Zayin on Shabbos. It'll be on the podcast shortly, and on Sunday morning we'll pick it up from the fifth line on Daf Yud Ches, fifth line on Daf Yud Ches, and hopefully we'll be back in shul. Unless we are informed otherwise. I'm sure they'll probably fix it today so that they'll have lights for Shabbos, and I'm going to rush over to shul now. Hopefully, even if the lights aren't working, there should be enough light to be able to down. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos, everybody. Everybody. Take care.